Hello and welcome back, episode 7 of season 3. Before we dive into the juiciest episode I think I've personally recorded as a solo show, I want to take a moment and thank you for being here. Like I tell you, moving with my own intuition and at my own pace with this show feels radical enough, let alone talking about all things emotion in a world that really has no reverence for the fact that they're inherent and vital to human beings living a healthy and vibrant life. So truly, from my heart, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure it goes without saying by now. However, if you've just found your way to my show, the Multifaceted Podcast, or have been drawn to working with me over the many years, you've more than likely been led here by a sensation or a feeling, or even your intuition. The way I choose to express myself and how I view the world is very much based on direct experience or embodied experience. In season 3 specifically, I'm really focusing and speaking about emotion and the human experience with a very unique lens. And it's not something that can be fact-checked, but rather something that's intended to meet you, the listener, and converse with your cells and move through your heart at a much deeper level. I found that whilst there may be some value in learning about emotion in formal and clinical settings, it can really be retained as information that gets trapped in the mind before it actually arrives at a place where it can drop down into the body and be interacted with. And this compartmentalization may seem like it's serving us, but really it isn't. I feel like it's a mirror for the ways in which we live in a cerebral society that is basically cut off from the neck down. And so in that same way, when we work with emotion in a more cerebral manner with information, it can be used to label, control and manage emotion rather than the experience of being with it and the emotional wisdom that comes from the experience of it. So emotions, and I've said this before, are deeply connected to the feminine current. And if there's one thing I know about her, energetically speaking, is that she reveals truth. And well, she is the truth. And that she will not be controlled. Emotions are here with a message or as a messenger of truth. And we're going to dive deeper into that today. And so when it comes to emotion for human beings, there always seems to be this sort of power struggle that takes place. This attempt to control, which ultimately distorts and manipulates the emotion and its inherent truth, like the deeper thing it's wanting us to look at. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty ready to dive into this episode. Very excited today. Our direct experience of emotion really evolves, so everything has its time. And so if you found your way to me, then I trust that it's time for you to interact and play and move with the energetic aspect of emotion, and perhaps open yourself to a new perspective and way of being with this incredibly vast topic that literally influences every single aspect of our lives on a daily basis. Whether you identify as an emotional person or not, the fact is we are emotional beings. It's a layer and component of the aspect of being a human. We communicate with emotion, and it's fundamental to our reciprocal relationship with life and other people. We come into contact with emotion and knowing how to be with ourselves during such experiences, and therefore it's fundamental to the way we relate to others. Before we dive in, I recently received the feedback from several people, so thank you so much for your feedback. And they all found it really valuable and actually journaled after listening to some of the episodes I recorded for you this season. So you may want to pause the recording of this show, grab a pen and paper and have it handy so that you can move to it during the show or perhaps at the end of the episode. I may explore sharing my experiences with you and answer some questions or pose some questions in the episode. So before we get going, I'd like to invite you to become comfortable in your body, in your space, wherever you are. To lean back, to feel your shoulders drop, to feel the tissues in your chest open and soften. And let this conversation be received beyond a layer of the mind. I invite you to let this conversation move through your body. Okay, let's go. I want to begin with a statement. Emotions are a gift because they hold truth. Notice what comes up for you in your body when I say that. Emotions are a gift because they hold truth. I know my personal story in previous stages of my life really did not like or agree with this statement. But the experience I have had later in my life and currently in my life have revealed the truth of this to me on multiple occasions. It doesn't mean it's easy. Okay, just want to caveat that. I think it was like several years ago, one of the teachers I was working with who introduced me to feminine energetics at a 101 level, okay? Because there are levels as you move through the work. And I smile now as I say this, but at the time, this particular teaching made so much sense to me, and it was the simple teaching that the feminine flows, and if it's true, it flows and feels easy, and if it's hard, then it's not correct. Have you heard that before? At the time, it felt good to have a simple rule to follow. Like, if you want to go back, listen to episode 5 of season 3, where I touch on my relationship to the rules. Great episode there, just a little plug. But what I soon found out was that this simple truth of the basic teaching held much more paradox than I was willing to hold or be responsible for. This may seem like a tangent, but this feels very connected to the concept of emotion as gifts, as truth. Because for me, the feminine is connected to the emotional body and to our experience of emotion as energy. The feminine and the subconscious is the body. It's what we feel and sense, and it's also the mystery and the unknown. Having a body and a soul has to be one of the wildest, most awe-inducing experiences for me. Like, the range of movement, the range of sensation, emotion, the true sense of resilience completely has me on my knees in gratitude and awe. And having experienced the edges and depths of severe nerve pain and loss of function in my body, to the extreme emotional and mental abuse I've endured, of dark depressive states and living with the passion of melancholy and ecstasy, one thing I am sure of is that it's a truly mystical and spiritual experience being alive as a human. And when I say this, like, I have this rush of emotion, or what I call tears of truth, that are just surging up through the back of my throat and into my eyes, because it really is one of the most amazing things. Like, I'm so glad to be alive, truly, even through all of that. Sure, there's a sense of flow with the feminine and there's ease available, but what often isn't, or what often is, I should say, left out, and for probably good reason, is that the way she, or the way life shapes you, molds you, carves you so that you can feel and know truth and begin to follow that implicitly, is an initiation. I've mentioned direct experience before, and I know that I've got an episode coming up where I'll have a guest on the show and we'll be talking about this topic specifically for you, so I'll only touch on it briefly now. But it requires so much bravery, so much responsibility to be with and move with what is true. And whilst it may or may not look easy to you, depending on your life experience, there certainly is a sense of flow there. It just has the ability to look really different to how it feels, or to how we think flow should feel and our expectation of that. For me, this flow has looked like quitting jobs, quitting projects, quitting relationships, quitting courses, cancelling contracts simply because it wasn't true anymore. And this definitely comes with navigation of emotion and rather feelings, which are the thought-fueled experience versus like coming from the deep well. And I'll go into that a bit later. So yeah, it came with navigating that and these feelings and all the fucking stories I had about that. Okay, I don't know about you, but quitting is a big topic. It's also looked like chronic nerve pain, because when I can't be with what is true, when I couldn't meet my emotional body, because I've lived through this, physical bodies communicate loudly, very loudly. It's looked like receiving bodily sensation or having an intuitive hit that makes absolutely no sense, like pack up your life, Adrianna, and move back to Melbourne. You know, and if I thought about it too long, it really didn't make much sense. It's also looked like receiving bodily sensations that were trying to communicate that what I was experiencing was a trauma bond, not real love. It's also looked like being in relationships that's induced strange feelings like impulses, and being too afraid to lose the connection, or what I thought was real connection. And I ignored it, only to find myself once again face to face with that same impulse much later down the line. Look, I could go on, obviously, but maybe you have an example of this in your own life. Let's pause. How have emotions revealed a deeper truth in your life? And have you been able to see this as a gift? Or potentially, can you begin to see this as a gift now? Look, my point is that living in accord with truth can be really confronting and confusing if you're not in a relationship with your body. And this is not to say that at times we're quote unquote disconnected from the emotional body, and that's bad. I really truly see these beautiful moments of being a student of life with a human body, with a soul, where our pain, where these, quote unquote mistakes can initiate us into our medicine. Because it's not about getting it correct or perfect. Every mistake has actually been exactly what I needed, because life loves me like that. And maybe life loves you like that too. It's just that perhaps you haven't been able to look at it in that way until now. When people don't know what embodiment is, and they want me to explain it to them with scientific terms and go into the detail of the nervous system, in a way it gives their mind something to do, which is the funny part, because whilst we can mind masturbate about everything, nothing will make true sense until it drops into the body. I see a lot of this talk around regulation online, and let me tell you, I don't make the rules. I just say what I see and what I feel. And there are a bunch of people out there with fancy letters on the ends of their names, pieces of paper, certified in blah, 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 who've spent time cerebrally massaging this concept of emotional health and well-being. But they themselves are emotionally constipated. And I'm sure you can feel that. If you gave yourself permission, instead of giving your power over to these people who seem to know better than you, if you actually just let yourself pause and feel that, because our bodies communicate with energy, and yet our culture continually teaches us to listen and take in the information rather than feel the energy and that information. That's a different kind of info. and really feel what people are really saying beneath the words, like through their bodies. But perhaps this is like something I can talk about on another episode at another time. Emotions can be recognized as gifts when we begin to understand and feel them as truth. Like, that feels really big, because I see people saying that there's no truth in our emotions. And at one point or another, I had agreed with that. And I can still see their perspective based on societal conditioning. But now I wholeheartedly disagree. And you're free to disagree with me too, just putting it out there. But I really disagree that there's no truth in emotion. Because you see, it's not the full picture. It's really lacking respect for emotion and the fact that it is an instinctive, mystical part of our human experience and a vital part of, being alive and having a soul. There are layers of truth in emotion, and the real invitation is to be able to feel and listen and receive this as we move through the wave of any emotion. Because sometimes the waves are soft ripples calmly moving to the shore, and sometimes they feel like tsunamis, but they all have a wave that they ride through. Emotions are visceral messengers inviting you to follow it all the way through, or surf it all the way through. I'm going with this, surfer ocean wave analogy. Surf it, follow it all the way through to the deeper thing that it is being expressed, so that you can be with what is true. And there's layers of truth to what we're feeling, and time is a big piece in that. Huge piece in that. Our culture is so fucking obsessed with being nice and doing what is right and good that we've collectively lost touch with the fact that the truth is not only the kindest thing, but the most loving thing. And our emotions are constantly trying to bring us back to this kind, loving aspect. What I see is that there is so much fear that surrounds emotion for this very reason. The fear of the unknown, of the underworld, of uncertainty, of death, because that's really like the deeper energetic of what's going on. Because if we connect with emotion, we connect with truth, and once we feel that, we are then propositioned with an array of new choices. And once we see, in my experience at least, we cannot unsee all the ways we've been bolstering up our identities with lies to avoid the transformative pain of the unknown. And I say lies because at one point it may have seemed like the safer choice to make, like telling a white lie. And trust me, okay? My younger self really got herself into many predicaments by not only lying to others, but lying to herself about what she was feeling. And I'm willing to wager that maybe you have too. These lies accumulate, and the armor or false sense of armor of protection that these little lies once created then becomes the very walls that keep us disconnected from one another, but also from our expression, our unique essence. And it's our emotional fluidity that acts as a portal to understanding and embodying who we are at a deeper level, and in a moment-to-moment response to life's dynamic nature and invitation. And so there's this other perspective. I want to sort of pivot here a little bit, that lies are also attempts to control. Sometimes these are conscious or subconscious patterns, but essentially they're distorted bids to stay in what we believe to be connection, even if the connection is not rooted in the truth, or even if the connection did not begin or was not established with truth. And this is where controlling emotion becomes manipulating truth. And, I might really look at this on an individual level in this particular show, but I know for a fact this gets extrapolated out through the community and definitely into the collective. And so whether or not there's feedback, I might expand this conversation into that realm upon your request, upon invitation. So what I've experienced is that we cannot, I should say, manipulate truth forever. We can try, but not forever. And just in case you're wondering, I'm always speaking from my own experience and practice and studies, from what I observe, with the acknowledgement that this will evolve, enrich, and shift as I continue to live and mature with all parts of me. You can't abuse or overuse self-regulation tools and hack, bypass, circumnavigate your experience of emotion. Sorry, you just can't. Because in doing so, you actually slow things down and run the risk of suppressing the emotion. And by that, you avoid the void, the place where all life begins and returns. And it's such a deep place of nourishment and alchemy. It's a profound place, and I hope that you either have or you get to know it before your physical life ends. What I see and what I have experienced is that when we do this, when we abuse and bypass and circumnavigate things, we are just trying to resist discomfort and avoid the imprints we received and messages we received around emotion from our parents and caregivers. That it wasn't safe, that it wasn't good, that you lost love, that it was dangerous, And so we attempt to avoid confrontation, which the truth is that this is the nature of emotion. This is the nature of the feminine. It's a natural confrontation that rises with that. And I think I've written or spoken about confrontation and conflict before, and they're very different, but they seem to get they seem to collapse on themselves, and people interweave or interchange the meanings of them. So if you want to hear more about this, let me know, and after the show I'll do something about it. So email me or whatever, because there's definitely a connection between truth, emotion, energy, and relationships when it comes to how we perceive confrontation. Anyway, I've said it once and I'll probably say it a million times more. People aren't talking about this in embodiment spaces. I see the way the tools are here to support us after we confront truth, after we confront emotion, after we be present with that. These tools are not to be used during the emotional wave or experience. I mean, have you ever even conceived trying to stop a wave in the ocean? You just wouldn't, right? Because you can't. It's just you just can't. Mother Nature's too strong. She's going to do what she's going to do, and emotions are like that too. I mean, you couldn't. So there's a reason for that, and you can't control truth. You can't control emotion, because when you try to control these things, you're manipulating it, you're distorting it, you're rejecting it, and I mean, you can try and control it, but let me tell you, it doesn't go well. Doesn't go well. And there will be no flow, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. There'll just be this huge lag, a fuck ton of resistance. And if we're going with this ocean theme, it'll be like a rip in the ocean that sucks you down to the bottom and drags you out far into the sea. And you're going to have a much bigger quote unquote problem to deal with. Okay, there's no amount of self-care or self-regulation that's going to help you. You have to confront and be present with the messages that are coming through emotion, because each emotion invites you to form a deeper relationship with it. Every single one of them has a different way of expressing and connecting and translating something much deeper for you. It's a relationship that moves beyond the cultural or social norms and connects you with the wisdom that each emotion holds, as it's here to guide, support, honor your expression in this lifetime. Like, I don't hear anyone talking about emotion like this. And if I do, they're very, very rare. Like, this is an important conversation. Can you tell I'm like lit up by it? And so, like, I really see that the embodiment tools we have are here to support these relationships. The tools are not the way that we relate to the emotion, though. They are here to move into action once we have witnessed, once we have experienced the wave that the emotion is rolling through and all the way through our bodies. And I don't think many people have approval for that. Like, how messy and uncomfortable and unpleasant that is. How many people do you know, like truly know, that can just be there without saying anything to you? I mean, if you felt safe enough to reveal this, that's the other caveat to it, you know. Like, if you felt comfortable enough to reveal, like, do you know someone that can be there without saying anything and let you roll through the emotional wave you're experiencing, with or without words, depending on how you express, you know? Like, let's take a moment and get real with that. I only know a few people, count them on one hand. And to me, that's alarming, and I really deep down want that to change for future generations. Like, think about the children I know in my life, and I don't want them to have, you know, one hand of people to count on like that, you know. And like, I've seen and experienced the difference between mentally induced or story-based emotion, aka feelings, and the difference between raw emotion. And it almost goes without saying that this is something that is truly, truly based on the individual and their unique patterns, their relationships, and their life story. You know, how I would speak to you would be different from your sister, your brother, your friend, the person at the coffee shop. Like, this work, whilst this podcast I hope is bringing great value, like, it is completely different and requires us to be met at the level where we're at, so that our relationship, our unique relationship to emotion, can really be nurtured and nourished and begin to thrive. And look, I know what I'm saying seems like a bit of a clusterfuck. That's kind of the point, really. I mean, I know this way of viewing and approaching emotions is rare, but I don't want it to be rare. It's how I relate, it's how I guide, and I believe it's so important that we have these conversations and bring them forward. And look, the point isn't that you agree or disagree with me. It's like nothing to do with that. It's that through participating in these conversations, you feel what is true. You think differently and form a relationship with self that fosters your own growth. You know, and I love to hear about it. Whatever your experience is, I love to hear about it, because for me, participation in this podcast is really fucking important. So thank you to those who have participated. I always love hearing from you. When we develop relationships with emotions, this is why I talk about them so much, we have a portal to self and truth that is unshakable by external forces. And I mean, all you have to do is look and see into the world what's happened over the last few years, what's probably going to continue happening. We need to know ourselves deeply so that we can be unfuckable with, you know. And it goes for us, it goes for future generations. It's important that we know our process, that we have an ability to understand and then empathize with others. Emotional work's deep. So deep. And the way it's currently taught, let's just say it does not honor the wisdom and complexity that each emotion holds. Because the truth is, emotion supports us if we're willing to look at it from that perspective. And so I'd like to circle back to my opening statement. I fixed my mic. Sorry about that. Emotions are a gift because they hold truth. And the way that they flow allows us to grow, open to life, and express our essence in the world. Now look, I wish I could tell you that by simply listening to this conversation, you'll recognize the patterns in yourself, you'll stop lying, you'll stop controlling and attempting to manipulate things. But maybe you will, I don't know. But the reality seems to point to the fact that direct experience is the only way we come face to face with our relationship to emotion and the truth they hold. I mentioned it earlier, and it warrants repeating. Emotion, truth are confronting by nature. Our culture is so concerned with being nice, polite, pleasing, that we've been led to believe that the truth sounds rude, ugly, bad, and makes us inherently bad for saying it, for living it, and is something to avoid if we want connection. However, my experience of this is the exact opposite. You see, when we tell the truth, we actually give ourselves and the other person, in some circumstances, the freedom to choose. And emotions give us that gift without any words. Visceral, powerful, undeniable. And yet our culture does not see it this way, but as something to push down, diminish, deny at all costs. Even in the times I feared that I would lose connection, it actually brought me closer to myself, to the other person, to God, to Source, every single time. And yes, sometimes that means we part ways with people or end things. But how liberating is it to be in full choice and have the freedom to choose that for ourselves? Life is so short. You can't get time back. And this is why this is really important to me, because I look at my life sometimes and, you know, these mistakes, as perfect as they are and have shaped me to become the woman that I am, like sometimes I feel like, fuck, I really wish I'd said that thing earlier. I really wish I found that out earlier. Maybe you're nodding along with me too, because we all have moments like that. But why I bring it up again is that it gives us now, in this moment, the opportunity to act, to move differently within our relationship to emotion and truth. I mean, little side note here, and maybe this will be another episode, who knows? But like, isn't this the way that we prepare for death? Be it an ego death or our physical form, like every time we meet the truth, we're preparing to become closer with ultimate truth, to return to the void. And this is what terrifies people. Unless you're weird like me, it kind of sort of excites you as well. You know? Anyway, to know that you can trust the truth that emotion is bringing to you requires just like such a different level of participation, a new way of relating. And yeah, I'm inviting you to like step into that, to look at that maybe for the first time. Granted, the confrontation is a lot to hold, but this is where having the resources and understanding a mentor, a teacher really allows us to expand our capacity for discomfort. Because one thing is certain in this life is uncertainty, is pain, and is constant work. Shout out to Stutz. If you know, you know. We live with a social narrative that emotions should be kept hidden, that it's not safe to express it. And whilst obviously I could go on and on, this just highlights the importance of our relationship with the primordial feminine, of finding our way home to the mother and to the father, and cultivating or remembering the importance of feeling and staying with what is true, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And to me, there is nothing more beautiful, confronting, or transformative as the gift of emotion. I said at the start of the episode that my perspective on this is not backed by science. Sure, I love to read about the topic from multiple perspectives, but the one I feel is not being discussed or explored is the spiritual and transformative, mystical lens of emotion. And if I wasn't clear, I experience emotion as coming from the subconscious and the great unknown, calling my consciousness to expand, but also giving me access to my humanity, which is, to me, a deeply spiritual experience. And I want all of it. All of it. But I also want to add that whilst this can be true, that there are many times when feeling an emotion is deeply uncomfortable. Yeah, it also requires us to be able to know when to take space, when to ride the wave, how to follow that wave, all the way through to the message that's encoded within. And sometimes that's just not possible. We miss the signs, we let it erupt, we feel relief inside the emotion, we let it out, we blame someone else for how we feel. And I want to reiterate, it's all part of it. It's not bad or wrong, good or right. I mean, only this week did I have an experience where I was totally sidelined by anger and required me to make amends and practice repair. Okay, valuable. But what I know is that every experience when it comes to emotion is truly valuable and important. Some of us need to learn how to meet emotion, some need to learn how to listen, and some need to know how to safely express, and some of us need to learn how to repair. Actually, who am I kidding? I think we all need to learn all of that, don't we? Like, constantly evolving as we change and grow, and like ways that we can expand our capacity in this realm. I truly have visions of not only having more conversations like this on a much bigger scale, for these conversations to become norm, for emotions to receive the reverence they deserve. So once again, thank you for being here and being part of these conversations, because they truly begin with me to you and you to someone else, and sharing these conversations and seeing how they ripple through our lives is how we get to this bigger scale. So I want to close out this episode with a piece I recently wrote, a poetic transmission that expresses the feminine energetic, truth and emotion. A little caveat here: when I speak to the Great Mother or the feminine, this energy can be interchanged with the universe, God, source, love or truth, or whatever name you want to give the great mystery that is life. And once I've shared it with you, I'll leave you 2 questions should you wish to contemplate. Are you ready? Emotions are the gateway to the Great Mother. Not through the identification with emotion, not through the intellectualization of emotion, but through the experience of emotion in your body. Your body is the gateway, and emotions are one of the ways she calls to you. The weight of emotion in your bones, the way emotion can bear down on your heart, the way emotion can ignite a raging flame in your belly, the way emotion can make you scream, the way emotion can make you cry, the way emotion amplifies gravity, the way emotion can propel you into action. It is in this way that any emotion can be a portal to truth, because she wants you to open, to flow, to grow, and to be. Emotion has the ability to crack you open to another dimension, to another perspective, to another version of yourself, to the truth that is aching to be felt. She's speaking to you as truth through your body. She never requires words. And maybe you notice the moments you've come into contact with her. Your body takes over. You're rendered speechless. Everything happening all at once. A symphony of presence in her ever-changing, chaotic nature. Your body is the way she knows herself, a visceral response. Your body knows what to do if you're willing to open to what is. It moves in phases and cycles, mind, ego, buzzing and swirling, dropping down, home, returning to body. But ultimately, time reveals all. Your soul patiently waiting, sometimes brutally guiding, but there is no denying that your body is the portal, the bridge, the gateway. And so, my listener, yes, you, if you really knew, like in your bones, that emotion was a gift and a messenger of truth, how would this alter your experience of emotion? What comes up for you? I'd love, love, love to hear from you, be it in the comments, on my Instagram, Multifaceted Podcast, or with a DM. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, big kiss.